Thomas and Brian want to start a cute little plant shop, and I'm all for it. And one of them wants to start a partnership, and the other one is looking more toward a corporation. And the benefits of a partnership would be um, shared management and like pooled competency, I guess. They would both have their individual sets of skills and knowledge and able to implement that into their management styles. They would have more control over their business and it would just be kind of more hands on. Um, there are no special taxes, so they would only be getting taxed once if they were to open a partnership as opposed to a corporation. Corporations have to go through like two sets of taxes. So you get taxed as like personal income, and then you get taxed again once you like distribute the money. They're called dividends. Once you distribute dividends to your stockholders, and then your stockholders get taxed. So they would avoid all that if they were to just be a partnership. It would just be their personal income tax. Some negatives could be the unlimited liability that they would face. If one of them messes up, they're both held responsible for it. They could lose their house, their business, all their flowers. The division of profits could be a negative if it wasn't like set out in stone exactly how those profits were to be divided. That could cause some issues. And if Thomas and Brian were to get in a fight, who knows what would happen to their business? That could be detrimental. And then if one of them were to want to leave, that could be an issue. And as far as if they were to lean toward a corporation, they would have limited liability, so their liability would only go as far as what they invested in the business, instead of like losing everything potentially. The risk is a little less, I believe. I'm not exactly sure. That's why I'm taking business. I do think that if they were to be a corporation in this instance, that it would be more of a like individual based incorporation, and they might not necessarily sell stock to stockholders. I'm not really sure. That's just what I understand from the reading. But they could borrow from investors potentially and have a more ease of like ownership change if some fallout did happen. They could have the possibility of stepping away from the business if they didn't want to be super involved in it in the long term. The initial cost is a negative though, and paperwork startup is lengthy and can be pretty expensive. And the double taxation that I mentioned when I was talking about partnerships is a negative. There's two tax returns, two levels of taxation, and the more like outsiders you bring in, I think the more possibility for conflict would occur, which is why I think that initially if they were to start this business, they should go with a partnership, because the initial cost is less and they can always change their status as the business grows if they decide to. And starting out, they would only be taxed once for personal income taxes. So I just think it seems less complicated for the beginning. And as far as Mr. King's least favorite type of business, my initial reaction is there's only one kind of business that you could possibly hate with a burning passion, and that's corporations. Feel free to prove me otherwise, Mr. King. I'm sure you will. But my reason being that because there's so much money in corporations, if one were to fail, like if it's a huge corporation, it could devastate the economy. And then there's the possibility of government bailouts, which can also cause more deficit in the economy. And somehow corporations are continually gaining constitutional rights, even though they're not actually people. Not constitutions. Corporations are just like legal entities that stand aside from the owners, and I don't understand how they can have like human rights when it's just like legal entity. Um, Corporations aren't people, believe it or not. I think that corporations have the possibility to be less regulated because of their size, and there's always like corporate scandals going on, yada yada yada. You always hear about that. Um, their primary objective is to raise money, and it's not for the betterment of society necessarily. Like, I'm not saying that all corporations are bad, but just generally, it's just about money and greed and all sorts of jazz. I also thought that it could possibly be a sole proprietorship just because there's so much more risk in assuming all of the, whatchamacallit, all of the liability in a business. I could see how you would think that's a bad idea, Mr. King. And just generally, they don't seem, from what I understand from the reading, they don't seem to like have a high probability of lasting as long as corporations do, or even partnerships do. I know some sole proprietors, and they are always tired. They are always tired. So, just from a personal standpoint of like seeing how that affects someone, I can see where that would be bad. But also, those businesses that I know that are sole proprietorships are like really important and like give back to the community. So that's why I'm gonna go with corporations being your least favorite. And I would love to hear your reasons why. I could go on a soapbox as well about my reasons for hating corporations. Hate's a strong word. I don't have enough knowledge to say that I hate them, but I really, really don't like them for the most part. So feel free to tell me why I'm wrong or right. Thank you.